It's not for ourselves, it's a community at large. And we've been pushing this agenda for 4 years, getting nuds here and there, but it hasn't been going very far. Therefore, we think a commitment from the candidates running for council is required, and that's it.
Now, I sent out an agenda for everybody, and I would ask that we respect the agenda because some people have to leave and some people want to get to the council meeting. And what I said was that we'd go around the table and each of us would take a chance or an opportunity to ask you a question because there's a lot of information, so that's why we're here. So
people I've talked to move here, taxes are too high, but we hear from the city that it's because of services. Township doesn't have services. We build areas like this, they come and use it. It's one of the problems.
I agree, but you know, Windsor has brakes and Windsor has buses. I'm not saying, you know, I don't think it's equitable that the same person should be paying that difference. It just, if you were driving up Boundary Road and going to Montreal, and if you had $100 in your pocket, and if your gas tank was empty, right? McEwen's is on the left, in the city of Cornwall, $1.21 a liter. Whatever the UPI is on the other side, it would be the equivalent of 94 cents a liter. Where would you fill your tank up if you had a choice, right? Mm-hmm. It's just math and it's business. You could go to the cleaner, maybe they're gonna wash your windshield at McEwen's, maybe they're gonna give you a bus ride out to the 401, but I can tell you it's gonna be empty. I see it in Quebec at the Lancaster border all the time. That Esso is full with people coming out and going back to Montreal. Money. So it has to have a negative impact, is what we're saying.
I guess we could ask why so many department heads sell homes outside the city.
Well, you know, the trouble is if we ask too many questions, we get all kinds of reports and they cost $50,000 a piece, right? So we just want to say we'd like to benchmark this as the reality and work towards making it more equal. That's the rolling back the taxes to just equalize this a little bit, to take a little of that away.
okay, Pat?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One, I agree. I have a lot of friends that moved out of town just because the taxes were lower, and they can get bigger lots and same size of home, a little bit cheaper, and taxes are lower. That's why they moved out. But the main problem is, I think, is the assessment. They were using their numbers. They were saying, sure, it's going down, but they didn't take into effect the assessment is what made all of our taxes go up so high. Now, the assessment, as long as the assessments are done correctly between Cornwall and South Glengarry or wherever, then it's not a problem. But if they're not, then it's a real issue.
If I can address that very briefly, the assessment in the three jurisdictions are done essentially by the same people, by the same organization. They've got the sales data. They're pretty accurate when it comes to single-family dwellings and the market value of them. They're not so accurate when you get into unique properties and different properties, but they're pretty on the mark. I think. Would you agree with that?
I've talked to them all. I know most of them in Impact. They don't reduce it by 10% because it's out in South Glengarry or South Stormont.
It's still market
It's
value.
it's a $185,000 house. It's $185. It's market value, and it is the same market value that we're dealing with in or outside the city. At least from my experience, you know. If there was, we'd have a worse penalty if it was much less out there, was what you're saying is the truth. Then they'd be really flocking out there, but it's not.
Gary?
I agree with everything that's been said here because I've been talking to seniors and some of my friends that are homeowners, and they're fed up with it and they're talking about moving out. And like I said, dealing with people in poverty, seeing that the people in Cornwall, the level hasn't changed up or down in the last 4 years. Spending at staff and City Hall is way up, and I think that's where the money's going, and if we live within our means, this is very, very possible. Because we have to control our spending because, like I said, this has gone to the point where it is troublesome where people are moving out. We're asking retirees to come back to Cornwall, and this is what we have to offer them. They'll never accept it, so we have to do something. I agree.
Okay, that's it? I had a question, and it had to do with trying to get a number of us together, because it's not gonna do any good if we have different, so we need issues that'll bring us together. So I think that if we, my question is, because I agree with the rationale, and I understand it, there's a lot of information, but for some reason, there's others that can't grasp it. In other words, the population has been 46,000 forever, and you guys are saying if we brought the taxes down, it would bring new growth and new assessment, okay? So I think what we should do, I'm prepared to sign the document tonight, but I think what we should do, my question is, would we be able to, once we get some names on this, would we be able to reach out to the ones that are supporting the labor movement? Because if we enter into it, and it's going to be huge, if we actually go in this direction, it's going to take labor, business, and government. We're not going to be able to do it ourselves. We're not going to be able to do it ourselves.
It doesn't mean you'll be successful.
No,
it just means you're going to shoot.
But I
for it.
think we should, I think we know, I think those of us that are here that are smart enough to know that even if we did, even if we were fortunate enough to get some people on there that are actually going to work, it's going to take the labor movement. What I'm saying is, we have 9 or 10 days. Once we decide, or I'm prepared to sign tonight, once we have those names, I think as a group, we should try and set up a meeting with them. We should try and set up a meeting with them. My question is, would you be in agreement of that if we were to do that? To see if we can bring them to the table.
I say you got to keep it very simple.
Okay.
Because once you're elected, then you can implement your targets or try to do whatever you can do to achieve it, and hopefully you will. Maybe you won't be able to. Maybe this will be what it'll be forever, 4%.
Okay.
Going up. I don't know, but if we keep it simple, that's why I kept taking stuff away, because I think if you make it too complicated,
All right.
a labor person was the one I just sold at Augustus. It won't be. It's not even closing. We just sold
Yeah.
a week and a half ago. She's a labor person, and when I explained the difference, she'd say, "Well, who's going to vote for that? I'll vote for them in 2 seconds." She said, "Didn't have too much explaining
Yeah.
to do. They need our help, and so if we can help them by at least equalizing this, I mean, this is just a benchmark. I mean, it's just going to have an overall effect if we can reduce taxes. It's more money in your pockets. How could a labor person say no to that? They can't."
Mike, I don't have a question, but I have 2 things. First, I have an agreement in principle that I support what you're doing wholeheartedly. 2 things. I said I want to look at it from what I know. I have the city facts. I've got my tax bills. I pulled them out. I'm not looking at Windsor. I'm not looking at South Glengarry. I'm not looking at South Stormont. I pulled out my tax bills. And 2 issues arose. Number 1, my taxes have increased since 2007 to the tune of about, overall here, I'm talking water, sewer, and property tax, of, if you look at 2007, 11%. It has gone up every single year, with one exception where it went down $5, and the following year they gave me another 25, so they made up the 5 they lost. So the pot has been growing every year. And we know that MPAC works on a 4-year cycle. They've now established that they're covering 2013 to 2016, and they have posted that the figure, as you said, is 4.5% per year. The city is guaranteed that automatic increase, regardless of what they do to their portion of taxation. Every homeowner, business owner, are faced with at least 4.5% increase. When I looked at the water portion of my tax, since 2007, it's gone up 30%. I know that's money out of my pocket. That's after-tax money that I have to pay my taxes with. So that's what I know. It's definitely going up, and as you stated, the pot is growing every year. They have more money to deal with, they spend more.
It's compounded.
Yes. Now, that's the first issue. The second issue that I have with all of this process is the fact that we are not told the total cost. We are focused on the property tax. When you look at your whole bill, which includes water and sewer, as I say, I saw a 30% increase since 2007. So, that's another area that you want to focus on. What did you take out of your pocket to pay the city in your after-tax dollars, total, not just property tax? Because yes, they did have decreases, but you know what? the education portion went down even more at almost 24%. And then I see, well, okay, let's look at it from the other perspective. You know, they say that, as I say, MPAC's going to guarantee them 4.5%. They say they've had 1,083 building permits in the past since 2009. These are family building permits. So these are new buildings that are built. There, the tax base went up by that when you look at it, okay? So there's more people paying taxes. Our taxes should have come down a little bit because you've got all these building permits that were activated. I haven't seen everything there. There was another one that I noticed, and that has to do with, just bear with me. Check my notes. Yes, as I said, the education portion has been decreasing every single year. So they can't say that education is taking money. We know impact's going up. We know their costs are going to go up for labor settlements, etc. But when you look at that and say, well, wait a minute, they've had more building permits, so there's theoretically more taxes coming in. Why isn't that at least holding the line? But it isn't. So I have a concern that, and I don't want to use the word spin, but not all of the information is getting out there. And if people start pulling out their actual tax bills and look at it and say, what was I paying last year, 2007, 8, 9, 10? It's an increase without a doubt. So I can support an initiative like this. Just looking at the
South
city.
Glengarry puts it right up on their tax calculator.
But this way, by only looking at Cornwall, somebody can't tell me I'm looking at apples and
They don't
oranges.
know.
I'm looking at me.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is the taxes are going up, period.
Mhm.
So that's my comment. I support this initiative.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do my homework as detailed as Mike did, but I'm hearing it at the doors, and primarily from people who told me they moved to this community after living in other communities, tell me Cornwall's a beautiful place, but the tax rate's really high comparatively for the size of the city. From my own personal experience, I brought a tax bill that is for my condo in Toronto. I still own it. Valuation is at $230,000. This is downtown. This is Queen and Jarvis. I'm a few blocks from the Eaton Center, a few blocks from St. Lawrence Market. I'm right downtown. My taxes before the education was added on, $1,190 and 17 cents. Now that's for a one-bedroom condo. It's not the same thing.
Talks about market value though.
Yes, but I think that this is obviously, you have a very good point, and you're right. I just want to illustrate that. I mean, I wish I had a better comparison for one bedroom here, but based on what you told me for the condominium you were talking about earlier, it's out of line taxes in this community, so I could definitely get behind an initiative like this.
I'm hearing a number of things. We're all going door to door, and people are saying to me, and I'm sure to a lot of you fellows, our taxes are too high for the income that we have. And Cornwall is known as a lower end pay scale community, and it's also known as a retirement community, which is a lower end income scale because they're on pensions, fixed income. And yes, there are some people that have, a little bit wealthier than others, but still, it's based on their incomes. And I totally agree with what these gentlemen are saying, but as many of you have heard of my speeches and how much I've been spending time on that budget. And what I don't know and worries me is a couple of things in the budget to help us not able to reduce the taxes. And that is when the auditors, the city auditors, tell council you have to get back into increasing the reserves because you're using that money, and if we were to pay all the bills right now, we'd be in the hole of $240,000. But that's not. So what I'm saying is, if we're saddled with this kind of a problem, that might, in turn, not allow us to be able to look at the taxes. But then on the other hand, when I look at the budget, and it'll be more clear tomorrow night in my speech, that from what I see, I won't quote it tonight, but it will tomorrow night. Again, but I'm only Roland Besner candidate, and it's not sour grapes, but I can see a number of millions of dollars that were wasted in that budget, and if we just took the waste that I think is waste And I can't get answered questions because nobody will answer the questions from City Hall. And if we could just eliminate some of that, we can lower taxes just with that savings and, apply it there. And then the other thing is, what we're not told, again in the budget, is the SCMs, all the warehousing that's down there. We've gained one awful pile of cash flow down there. And the city doesn't tell us what they're doing with that cash flow. So, these are all.
I'm going to stop you for a
things that-
second. If all of you people get elected, you are the city.
Yes.
Nobody tells you what to do. You're the council and you approve a budget.
Yes,
That's
sir.
how these people do it, Roland.
Yes, Sandy, but depending on what your saddled with.
You might not
Could
be
be a
able to.
problem.
You might not. We're not saying you're going to promise to try to roll back taxes. Whether you'll be able to do it, maybe you won't.
But at least you'll
at
work
least
on
you're
it.
going to try and look
Yes.
at it. That's all we're trying. That's what
Okay.
we're trying to say.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
Sorry, Jamie, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's more of a comment than a question. I've been focusing on the taxes situation for quite a while. As a matter of fact, I'm probably one of the few people here that's a member of CAG. And the first example I used was exploring switching to the OPP from the City of Cornwall Police. And I did research. The City of Perth saved 25% by switching, and they did it over the course of one term. That savings alone, if we had similar savings in Cornwall, would be 5%. And that's just one item. This term we paid for 2 HR managers, we paid for 2 CAOs, we had some other overlap, we had a lot of issues, and we've seen the compounding results from higher taxes. Now you guys, this is your second election, and in this past term, we haven't heard or seen that much from CAG. What are you guys prepared to do with candidates that actually want to get this done? Because candidates need support, and they need strong support to be able to push through agendas like cutting taxes and lowering taxes, because there's a lot of meat. We can cut taxes 5% easy over 4 years without cutting services, but we need people behind us and actual physically be there.
Okay, so the question is, what are you going to do for
Dave and Roy, I think we were pretty much to every budget steering committee meeting, weren't we? And trying to give our feedback. Was that correct, or am I incorrect? Yeah. But we've also had a letter from one of the existing council that said, we're not the ones elected to make these decisions. They were. And they're right. This is why we're here. We're not here to make all these decisions. We're not saying the OPP. We're not saying this. We're just saying we think the taxpayer needs this relief from consistent increase in taxes. How you do it, I don't know. Maybe you can't do it.
Okay, Todd?
I like the spirit of this. In business myself and dealing with budgets, big and small, I like targets. And typically, the board of directors will come down and say, here's your target for the year, and we have 13 different periods to try and hit those targets. So targets are essential. I'm a little, I don't know about a rollback, but I certainly would think if we do our homework and we look at the savings, and as Roland pointed out, there's been some waste. And with new assessment coming in, I don't see why a flat zero for a few years should be possible. I don't know about rolling them back. I haven't had a chance to look all over your materials yet, and I will certainly do that. But I like the fact that there's a target to aim for. I love it. I just don't know if the rollback is as possible as a freeze.
I'm going to say one thing.
Yep.
In 2003, the city of Cornwall spent $60,000 on a strategic plan for the economic development, and you're on that committee,
Yep.
right? Okay. In 2006, there was 200 people at a room. The same consultants were down, right? You like targets?
Yep.
In their report, it says quite clearly, we want targets. You should have targets on new assessment growth and population growth. So I asked the question in 2006, what are your targets? That's all. I'm not trying to be mean or do something. In 2010, no targets. I don't think there's a target today. You need a target to shoot at. If you don't make it, so what?
Yeah.
That's all. So I'm just saying we need a target of rolling back. Okay, maybe it's rolling back tax increases, which is a 0%. Reword it. I don't care. just try to do something, because if we keep on going, as Maureen Adams said, a lot of these expenses, right, are non-sustainable, right? Not tax increases, but a lot of our infrastructure spending is non-sustainable. So we have to, maybe it'll be an insurmountable problem and taxes have to go up. Hey, that's life. But at least you're trying and you've said, and the voters know, or we know, when we go to the Budget Steering Committee, who's in agreement with this, so we might as well forget the others and just focus on, hopefully there'll be 6 of you people, and then that'll happen. Because that budget can't get passed unless you approve it.
That's why, in principle, I agree with what you're saying, because if you don't have a target, going into a budget process and saying, let's keep it under 3%, I think is the wrong way to go. I think you should be going in saying, let's look at 0 and work the other way around. So what did you do last year in your budget? If my budget was X number of dollars, let's subtract the capital expenses that are one-shot deals, and then work your way back up, rather than start at 3% and try to work your way back down. Because I think if that's the approach they're taking, and which is the approach they have been taking, we end up with all these large increases. So I like the fact that we would be committing to a goal. It's a lot easier to work towards a goal than to work the opposite way down.
Well, hang on, let's go back this way.
Can I have the honor of being first to sign it?
By the way, before you sign it, what I'm saying is this is a little flyer I put out myself in my own company. I send it around 10, 15,000 copies. This, when you sign it, Roland, we're going to send around 15,000 copies to the voters of the city of Cornwall and say, you guys have signed this. If you want to have a rollback of your tax increases or try to reduce taxes, these people have committed in writing to do it. So don't sign it if you don't want them to see it, because the public, the voters are going to have this, and I'm going to suggest they take it to the polling station, period.
You're going to send out 15,000 of them?
Yeah. I'm going to send them out. That's how much I'm fed up with what we've been, this is reality, this is not fact or fiction. We've taken out everything anybody could dispute, and this is reality. So you guys should have a target of equalizing our taxes between South Stormont and South Glengarry, and then I'll be just go way into the sunset, I'll ride off forever.
And,
You know?
the only comment I have is if you want to sell it more to the citizens of Cornwall, focus on Cornwall. So pull out your tax bills, look at what you're paying in total.
Unfortunately, I do that every day. People don't know what they're paying this year. You know that. People, they shred stuff, they garbage stuff, they pay it monthly. They don't know what their costs are, period. They think we're lying.
But Claude, you had
I fit right in with that $185,000 assessment, and that's why I'm saying, when Mike brought up the point, my water bill's now $900-some. That's a tax. They call it a rate, it's a tax. And, you know, when you add those two things, I'm basically on fixed. My pension, company pension, is not indexed. So what I'm getting today is what I'm going to get in 15, 20 years from now. So
We hear that. I hear that every day. I hear that every day from the people I'm listing.
So when I sit down and think about it in 20 years, and I add it all up, and I'm just going to say, I can't keep it off. 10 years from now, I'm going to sell the house. And
There has to be around that council table.
The will.
The will, the commitment to holding the line on taxes. There's got to be, can we do something cheaper? Can we eliminate something? We're not talking about necessarily slash and burn. I see, if I ask everybody around this table and indeed in this room, are you in favor of reducing emissions and reducing energy waste and blah, blah, everybody would put their hand up, right? Have you looked at the number of buses in this city that run around with nobody in them? The school board have big buses for lots of kids and small buses for a few people, few kids. Maybe we could do the same thing, you know? They don't have to all be 40-seater buses because there's nobody on the goddamn buses.
Dave, you're taking my punch away from my speech.
Anyways,
But that's the detail. As I said at the outset, we don't want to get lost in that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we have OPT come in and cost policing services, perhaps. But That's the detail, that's the implementation of how do we get there. What we need around the table is leadership from those elected people, not us,
Those are
you
copies of
guys,
what you've signed.
to hold the line.
Right on.
You know, our family owns a business in South Glengarry and a business in Cornwall, and the difference in taxes across the,
I didn't even talk about the commercial, by the way, or the industrial.
Well,
The tax rate on the commercial is capped at 10%, so that just gives you an idea.
Why 15,000 houses or 15,000 flyers instead of 18 or 20?
Jamie, just one second, pass that around there. No, we're
I
going
think
this-
there's just 15,000
We're
houses.
going this way, if anybody had any questions, because if we're gonna, if not, you can break after, the media can ask questions, or somebody wants one-on-one, unless somebody else had another question you wanted to ask.
Tomorrow,
Hang
at
on.
the council, at the thing meeting, at the
Yes.
chamber meeting, we're gonna ask, we won't be asking you guys, but we're gonna ask every other candidate, will they support that, yes or no? And if they say no, it's gonna be, don't agree. We'll be going on this when it goes out. That's okay too. If they don't agree, they don't. That's awesome. That's called democracy.
is Dennis Carter signed?
I didn't get Dennis to sign yet, but I'm gonna get him. He said he was.
The only comment I have is with Todd's comment about benchmarking and goals, those benchmarks and goals are there. It's called a BMA study that the city participants, that's what it's called, Dave?
Yeah,
BMA study.
They don't do it anymore, though,
It's
do
an
they?
800-page or 1,000-page document that lists everything from all the communities. We've reviewed it, we've looked at it, we've shared it, but the current council doesn't,
When
has
we
a
started,
tendency not to look at it.
when we started comparing and putting some documentation together, we stopped participating as a city.
Who
And
were
that's a
the-
way to compare us with 85 other
I
communities.
believe they participate
And I'm
every 2
gonna
years.
I'm gonna give you
I
the,
did a story about that.
pass these around.
Who are the three that wouldn't sign last term?
Maybe, no, okay, hang on, just one second. If we're gonna ask questions, we're gonna go this way, and they gotta be appropriate for the discussion. We're trying to wrap things up, because
Yep.
people wanna go to
I wanna
City
go.
Hall for
Yep.
7, so.
You're going to City Hall, where is
Well, there's a council
it?
meeting.
Oh, no, Sandy's going.
Oh, you're going to City Hall too?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so if there's nothing else, you guys
If
can
I
ask.
wanted to be in City Hall, I'd put my name on there.
Okay,